I'm Jane Rudolph.
And I'm Monsignor Charles Minor.
I'm Father Joe Glass. Welcome to Reel to Reel.
And after the long, dreary winter, finally, the first day of spring.
Well, why do they call Lent Lent? Because it's spring. I could never figure that one out, but Lent, it gets its derivation from the word spring.
Really?
I don't figure it out either, but I never think of just spring. I always put another word after that, and that's spring training. Baseball. That's what I think about this time of year.
You're a big Phillies fan, aren't you?
I am not. I am not. Here, right in Philadelphia, I will declare my loyalty to the New York Mets.
We have just lost half of our people.
I know, really. They're all changing the channel to Murder, She Wrote or something like that. Anyway, let's get started to what's happening this evening. Now, if you've never heard of the Modern Pulpit, well, you really have, because you're watching it right now, because the Modern Pulpit talks about the good news through radio and through television.
And that television area can tell you about some 7 steps of growth and spirituality. That's how incisive it is.
And we'll be taking a look at a brand new magazine, A Positive Approach. We'll be chatting with the publisher, Patricia Johnson.
When we think of spring, we think of new life, such as tiny little lambs, and then the egg. And once I heard a wonderful story about the egg, tying it into the Easter season, that the egg is almost like a little tomb, and then it breaks forth with new life.
We always think of new life as just a beautiful new baby, but there's all kinds of processes which take place, and it's always the idea of going from one stage to another. And so it's a growth and development which comes from death to life.
A few seconds. That's all the time it takes to sign your name to a donor card. My name is William Devane, and this card makes me a potential donor. Don't get me wrong, I love life, but in the event that something were to happen to me, I'd like to think that I could give someone else a second chance. And I just might, because transplant surgery saves thousands every year.
When we made the decision to donate the organs, we were very glad that we made that decision. 2 days later, when Craig Meinking called us from the organ donor office and told us where the organs went, that his heart was transplanted Tuesday night, 2:30 in the morning, in a man's chest in Baltimore, Maryland, and his one cornea and the 2 kidneys were transplanted at Buffalo General Hospital. The feeling we had was so unbelievable. It's really difficult to express how we felt. We were so excited that it really got us through the rest of the funeral, and it's carried us through the whole year.
Carmela Williams lost her 20-year-old son Christopher on December 18, 1984. He had suffered severe head injuries as a result of a motorcycle accident 2 days earlier. When the doctors gave Mrs. Williams the prognosis that Chris would die, she and her daughter Karen agreed to donate his organs so that others would live.
We had talked about it about 3 years ago. I read an article in the paper about a young man and discussed this article with Chris. This young man was in a coma for a year, and when we talked about it, Chris said, "Don't ever do that to me, Mom." You know, he said, if I'm ever in a situation like that, don't keep me alive with all kinds of machines, and donate my organs, and let's do some good for somebody else. I never thought I'd be in the position where I had to make that kind of a decision, but it was nice kind of knowing that we had discussed it and that he felt very strongly about that.
Christopher Williams gave the gift of life to 4 people, but the list of patients waiting for new organs continues to grow. The most publicized transplants are kidneys, hearts, and livers. When a potential donor becomes available, a search is begun for a suitable recipient. If a match cannot be made in the local area, efforts are made to help alleviate the great national need.
There are nearly 8,000 people in the United States today awaiting kidney transplants. There are nearly 75 people waiting heart transplants, and there are over 130 people waiting liver transplants. Each year, there are between 12,000 and 30,000 potential donors, and out of that number, only about a third become donors. So there's not really a shortage of organ donors. The referrals is what the shortage is of.
Hope Alcorn is a transplant coordinator at the Organ Procurement Agency of Western New York. She says efforts are being made to increase the number of donor referrals. Governor Mario Cuomo signed a bill into law which took effect on January 1st, 1986.
What it does is it designates the hospital administrator or their designee to ask for consent for organ donation in appropriate deaths. As far as religious beliefs, people ask us about religious considerations. Religious leaders all over the world have basically agreed that donating organs is a gift of life to another, and therefore they're for it. In situations where family members, a donor family, will ask things more specifically, I usually suggest that they speak with their own clergy person to clarify for them.
I never thought about organ donation. I never thought there was a great need for it. Now that it's hit our family, it's a different story now.
Bob and Jane Rose's 7-year-old son Danny suffered from a rare disease in both of his kidneys which caused them to stop functioning. For 9 hours each night, Danny slept connected to a dialysis machine while he waited for a transplant. Finally, they received word that a donor kidney was available.
When they called, it was a beautiful summer night. Danny was busy playing croquet with his sister Amy, and I stood and looked out the window. I knew this call would be coming sometime, but I guess I wasn't actually ready for it. He was too busy playing croquet. He didn't want to end his time there in the yard. And at first he was reluctant. And after we talked a few minutes at the kitchen table, he realized that that was the next step.
I thought it would be a good thing so I could lead a more normal life. Like I could play, I could go swimming. I couldn't with my dialysis tube. And it's about, I could sleep overnight at my friend's house without going on dialysis.
Not only the benefits for the recipient family, which are quite obvious, returning to a more normal quality of life and increased wellness, but for the benefits for the donor family. Through our experience in our own agency and through speaking with other coordinators and other programs throughout the country, and with the families months later, they will share with us that having been able to help others through donating organs has helped them through their own grief process.
It does make you feel better to know that you are helping somebody. When you lose somebody, it's a difficult thing. It's a very trying time, but to know that somebody is getting a better quality of life because you've made such an important decision, I think is fantastic. It's helped us, and anybody I've talked to since the accident has happened, and it's been almost a year now, I can't stress the importance enough.
Isn't it interesting that with electronics like we are now using TV and all the skills we've developed with laser beams and devices and surgery, we still have to go back to the human element to supply organs.
And please stay with us for Father Joe Glass with a wonderful lady, Pat Johnson, coming up next.
Since 1981, Reel to Reel has been proclaiming the good news by bringing you stories of Christian faith in action. We do it by roaming the Delaware Valley, searching for people of faith, hope, and charity.
But like all modern media, it is an expensive proposition. If you're a new viewer or if you've enjoyed Reel to Reel for many years, we'd like to thank you for watching and invite you to participate by actively supporting the show.
With costs rising all around us, we need your financial support. A donation of $5, $10, $20, or whatever you can send will help to keep us on the air.
Send your contributions to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, room 907, Philadelphia, PA 19103. And thank you.
20 years ago, leukemia took the lives of enough people to fill a ballpark. But today, more people are surviving thanks to research by the Leukemia Society of America.
Hi, I'm Gary Carter. Join the team that's striking out leukemia. The Leukemia Society of America. We're closing in on a killer.
Ministry to those with disabilities has always been such an important part of the work of the Catholic Church down through the years. I'm happy to introduce to you now Patricia Johnson, someone who's helping the churches and helping lots of institutions around our country work with the disabled. Pat, welcome to Reel to Reel.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are here, I mentioned at the top of the program, to talk about a relatively new venture. I call it a brand new magazine. It's really not brand new, but in the magazine world it is an infant, isn't it? A magazine that's been around. You're in your third year.
That's right. We've just begun our third year.
It's called A Positive Approach, and it's a magazine geared primarily to those with disabilities. Can you tell me a little bit about how the magazine got started, Pat?
Well, I changed career midstream, call it burnout or whatever, and I needed something new to go on with, and the idea came to me. I call it instilled. I call it a voice from God saying, hey, this is what I want you to do. Okay. And we formed a magazine called A Positive Approach, strictly for the physically challenged, which is the disabled and handicapped. And that is a person with a disability or handicap. It does not mean that they're confined. We hate to use the word wheelchair bound or confined to a wheelchair, because a wheelchair is mobility. You're confined when you're in bed, but a wheelchair is wheels. It gets you moving, so therefore, never use the word wheelchair bound.
Okay. And your magazine is geared now not just to individuals, though. You have kind of a unique angle on who you're marketing this magazine for. It's a wider audience than just the individuals.
Oh, yes. It goes complimentary to all the rehabilitation centers across America and all the hospitals with rehab departments. They get that in the therapy department.
They're all receiving those copies?
All receiving copies.
And using them not just for their own enrichment individually, but using them as teaching tools.
Oh, yes, a teaching tool, because we have articles that teach art, how to paint using a head splint, how to paint with your teeth, how to paint with your feet, or a hand splint, how to garden from a wheelchair. It goes on and on and on.
You get into all these different activities.
Oh, yes, careers, computers.
It's marvelous. How has it been developing over the 2 years now into its third year?
It's just marvelous. We started at 300 subscribers, and we now reach over 170,000 readers, and that will tell you something right there.
And what are you finding? What kind of response is out there? What are you hearing back?
Well, the feedback has been tremendous. We get about 125 letters a week, and they ask for more and more spiritual articles. And this we found to be very important, and we're geared into this. We are a Christian publication, and we just love to reach out spiritually, encouraging one to want to better their lifestyle and situation the best that that disability will allow.
Okay, and you're getting the spiritual element more and more into the forefront of your magazine, aren't you?
Oh, definitely. We have about 125 Catholic dioceses that subscribe for the magazine. They use it also as a teaching tool, both to encourage one physically and especially spiritually. We have many priests that contribute articles and dioceses that contribute articles. We have a priest in New York with one arm that heads a national theater workshop for the disabled. He writes for us on a regular basis. Victoria's Missionaries in Illinois, they're on our board of directors, and we're just reaching out in every way we can possible.
Super. What are some future directions that you've got in mind?
Well, we're going to start a new section called A Positive Approach Junior. It will be written by, for, and about the child with a disability. It will start shortly. It'll have its own color cover, and it'll be about the last 8 pages of the magazine.
Okay, and I know also you've got a tentative plan in place for a training program for those with disabilities who are interested in careers in publishing.
It's so exciting. We're going to train about 60 people a year, individuals with physical handicaps and disabilities that desire a career in the publishing field. And we're going to train there on our premises, everything from editing all the way on through to layout and shipping and mailing out of the magazine.
Marvelous.
It's exciting.
Some radio spots, I know you've got.
Radio spots. We want to have a syndicated Christian program that will interview the same type of a positive approach, and we will interview those with disabilities and handicaps and let them say it.
And all of this, the mainstay for it all is the magazine. That's the foundation that allows all these other things to happen. How about a word just in your own experience now to perhaps viewers, the families who may have children with disabilities or people watching who themselves have disabilities?
Well, it is so important to reach out to one with a disability or handicap, to let them know that we care and that we are there to help. And that's what our Catholic dioceses are doing. We're reaching out. We want to bring the individual back to church. All Catholic dioceses throughout the country have formed a new division of bringing that handicapped individual back to church, or at least setting aside certain curriculum activities that one can do.
Right. Ministering to those with disabilities.
Oh, yes, and we are a ministry to that ministry.
I've got a copy of your magazine here. I'll hold it up for our viewers to see. A Positive Approach. If you'd like more information about the magazine, how to subscribe, or how to support it through advertising dollars, we'll be giving you the address of Reel to Reel later on. You can write to us, and we'll put you in touch with Patricia Johnson. Thanks again for being with us. Back to you now, Monsignor and Jane.
talk about process. We started this program with the notion of spring, and then we went to organ transplants. Now we go to handicapped. There's no end to the growth that we can develop on this program.
When we think about growth, especially with a tiny baby, you go through the physical changes. They start to walk and talk, and then they go on and on and on. Well, tonight, Father Legere is going to take us through a spiritual journey, and he's going to talk not about the physical, but the spiritual.
Greetings in the Lord. Everyone goes through cycles of physical growth. That's pretty well accepted. But people don't often allude to the fact that we also, from time to time, go through spiritual cycles too. The first 7 years of life, in many ways, are characterized by self-absorption. We might think that little children are capable of great love, but they're really not. They're pretty much self-preoccupied. From 7 to 14, people begin to enter into relationships. Children go to school, they establish friendships, and of course when they hit puberty, they begin deeper attraction to members of the opposite sex. And then from 14 till 21, another 7-year period, this seems to be the time in our culture when people work towards developing their mental abilities, preparing a livelihood. They work on their personalities. They grow up in every single sense of the term. From 21 till 28, this is when most people enter into what one might call the householder stage. People begin to marry, start families, develop their careers. They work on their outer world. A key time seems to be from 28 till 35 spiritually. That's a time for spiritual awakening. When you look at Jesus Christ, and when you look at other people like St. Augustine and Cardinal Newman and some of the great mystics of our time, that seems to be the time when there's the full blossoming of spiritual awakening. If you had to choose one classical time, it would be about 31 and a half years of age. That's when people begin to start examining the deeper issues again. And then from, say, 35 to 42, this seems to be a time of increasing wisdom or Christ consciousness. People begin to sense their connectedness with nature, their connectedness with God. This is a time when people begin not just to believe, but to know, to feel God in their lives. And then from 42 till 49, this is a time of increasing surrender. If everything goes right, a person can end up at the end of this time saying, I live no longer I, but Christ lives in me. And we all have our fears and hang-ups, of course, that sometimes get in the way of all this process, but the blueprint seems to be there. That potentially all of us, if we are patient, will feel and experience the life of God unfolding within us. And so may the Lord, who has begun this good work in us, one day bring it to completion.
Well, I really enjoyed that, and I know you did, but what about me? I have to wait. How long do I have to wait till it gets around to the 70, 75 stage?
We'll let you know in a few months, okay? And we'll let you know that it's time to stay with us, so please don't go away.
Sometimes I think my mother was the strongest woman in the world, because she kept our family's world close together with almost nothing. One day I said, Mama.
Many people find retirement isn't as much fun as they thought it would be. Too much time on their hands, too little to do. The Retired Senior Volunteer Program has thousands of opportunities for retired executives, housewives, engineers, teachers, whatever your skills or schedule. RSVP has something to fit anyone's interests. You've learned a lot in your life. Share the experience of a lifetime.
We welcome your comments and suggestions and encourage you to write to us at Reel to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, Room 907, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19103, or call us during regular business hours at 215-668-9842.
Milton Sheen, I think, said it best. He said, radio is like the Old Testament, for it is hearing of the Word without seeing. And television is like the New Testament, because the Word becomes flesh and dwells among us.
You know, that's so typical and so great of Bishop Sheen. I happen to know him, Jen. I met him a couple of times and did a few things with him. But, you know, to integrate things was what he could do. He could integrate all these things so beautifully and so well, whether on radio or on television. And, you know, the fusion that cements us together in life maybe just be, or today, on the spots you see on television or you hear on radio.
Sometimes I think my mother was the strongest woman in the world, because she kept our family's world close together with almost nothing. One day I said, Mama, how did you ever do it? She said, I didn't do it alone. I did all I could do and left the rest up to the Lord. Now that's faith. And Mama not only believed it, she gave us a faith that was just as strong. Of all Mama gave us, that was the best.
From the Knights of Columbus and your nearby Catholic parish.
The Diocese of Cleveland, Ohio is on the crest of a new wave with their use of media for statewide evangelization. Sister Catherine Lee was Cleveland's evangelization director for 6 years.
The project for the statewide evangelization media effort came about from the evangelization directors of each diocese of the state.
How much do you love your children? You must love them a lot. Look at what you give them.
Our hope with the radio spots is that they would touch people's lives in realizing what they're missing by not being part of a parish community. What we found with the radio spots is that they are so diverse, so different for each of the stations, that as they're listening to the normal types of music they have on the radio stations that they enjoy, that they would be able to hear this message and say, this is something for me. This is something I should reconsider. I want to go back to church. The statewide evangelization media project really was not that difficult to get going. There was a lot of planning and many, many meetings that went into it. But because of the great need, we found that the bishops of Ohio were very cooperative in approving the project, and that the Knights of Columbus were very happy to sponsor this financially.
The Knights of Columbus donated $300,000 to implement the statewide media program. Robert Sears, past state deputy, was directly involved in making the Ohio statewide evangelization effort a reality.
I understand that Bob is coming in to show us the materials on the evangelization program. I'm looking forward to it.
Hi,
Bob. How are you?
Good for you today.
Good, good.
Well, you both had asked about the evangelization program, and I brought a kit with me, and I'm here to explain and try to answer any of the questions that either one of you might have. Do you have any questions? I think it's a great program. I don't feel that we've done enough on it. It seems like there's so much more we can do, but I guess it's like anything. You know, it's you've got to kind of wait, and it's really a program that you can't judge what the use was for today. Maybe in years we'll look back and say, well, now this is because of the evangelization.
There's no way we would have been able to do this project without the assistance from the Knights of Columbus, because the work that we did with the media materials was very expensive. And yet that's the way that we reach people today, through the media.
Sometimes people have so much on their hands. Problems, pressures, burdens that seem unbearable. The sad part is that many people who have so much to handle have so little to hold on to. That's what
we tried to do through the television ads was reach a group that perhaps would not be turned on by Catholic ad as such, but might be turned on by a message of hope.
Say, what do you think of that?
That's good.
Statewide, the dioceses that have a widespread and more rural population will make the most use of the radio and television commercials. In the highly populated areas, print materials were found to be the most helpful. But of all the media materials produced, there is always one that stands out.
It's based on the scripture that happy are the feet of those who share the good news of Jesus.
You know, feet and God have a lot in common. Really, they do. Why, without them, we couldn't walk or run or jump or dance. We couldn't even stand. And sometimes it takes a lot to stand up under the pressures and problems we all have to face. That's when God's love gives us all the support we need. So let's look at our feet and think about the real foundation in our lives.
Let's live God's love together.
So if someone saw one of the TV spots or heard a radio spot, and perhaps somewhere down the line, 5 or 10 years, they recall this and they say, oh, maybe I should look again at my life. That's what we're hoping for.
In the encyclical Pope Paul VI wrote on evangelization, he said that the media are the means whereby the church proclaims the good news to millions of people. In the media, the Pope says, the church finds a modern and effective version of the pulpit. With their media blitz, the Catholic churches of Ohio and the Knights of Columbus have created just such a modern pulpit.
I think it surprises a lot of people that the church is so involved in the media, radio, television, and the print media as well, but you often hear, we need another Fulton Sheen.
I wonder, I'd like to discuss that a little bit if you take the time. I don't think so. Maybe you think differently. I think we've outdistanced the need for the preacher on TV. I think this kind of thing and other kinds of action programs are more necessary.
Yes, a more consistent, steady presence in the media, I think, is needed, but not that one focal point. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I believe that Fulton Sheen himself would not do that anymore. He knew the medium so very well, knew how to work it and how to operate. He understood both radio and television later. I think he would see a different approach today.
One great thing always I think about our Catholic faith is our faith is always in the Lord, in God, and not in one particular preacher or minister. Right?
That's true. Okay.
It's a nice strength, I think.
And we'll let you know what's happening next week on Reel to Reel, because we're going to hear When Faith Yields from War, an unusual story and a very stirring program from the Korean and the Vietnam Wars.
And with Fulton Sheen's idea of radio and television, the Vatican has always been interested since Marconi started them, and they have a great program in the Vatican radio.
From the Camden Diocese, we'll meet Monsignor Eugene Pack, who'll be talking about the House of Charity. He's the director of the House of Charity, and a feature that I'm looking forward to learning more about, something going on in the Diocese of Scranton called the Race of Saints. What do you think, Charlie? St. Anthony to show in the 4th.
Get on your mark.
Get set and go. And we'll see you next week. Until then, please take care.
Goodbye and God bless you.
Good night. See you next week.
Travel arrangements for Reel to Reel by Atkinson and Mullen Travel of Media, PA. Phone area 215-565-7070.
A long time ago, I had an abortion. At the time, I thought it was the only answer, the only solution. Then I woke up one morning with this incredible emptiness, and I started to cry, and I couldn't stop. You see, I never really dealt with the reality of my loss. Project Rachel helped me to realize God's love for me and allowed me to find forgiveness in His church and in myself.
If you need help, call Project Rachel at 609-546-8945.
To become legal residents.
On his recent visit to the United States, Pope John Paul II urged all persons to help the undocumented immigrant to obtain legal residence. Across the U.S., Catholic programs offer assistance in applying for legalization. But time is growing short. If you or someone you know may qualify, call to get help and information. Legalization Program, Immigration and Refugee Services, Archdiocese of Philadelphia and Diocese of Camden.